In this educational section, I would like to guide you through the best practices to have healthy dietary habits for lifelong good health. I would like to start by noticing that when we eat, we are not necessarily nourishing our bodies. These are two different processes. The process of eating starts when we decide which foods we are going to eat, and it also involves the cooking methods that we use to prepare these foods until the moment that we finally consume them. While the process of nourishing starts when our bodies transform these foods into smaller molecules. So they are going to be absorbed by the gastrointestinal tract and they are going to be transported by the systemic circulation through the different cells in the tissues of our bodies. And finally, those particles that are not digested by our gastrointestinal tract are going to be eliminated. These smaller molecules are known as nutrients, which are chemical substances that our bodies require to sustain the basic functions such as breathing, digesting, thinking, walking, working, and also to maintain the structural and functional integrity. There are six major nutrients that the human health requires, which are carbohydrates, lipids, protein, vitamins, minerals, and water. And it is the combination and amount of nutrients that we consume by the foods that are going to determine our health. And the food is the vehicle in which our body obtains these nutrients, and they are materials that could be in a raw, processed, or formulated form, and they are also composed of water and other organic nutrients and should be consumed orally. And everything that we eat and drink in a habitual manner is going to constitute a diet, and it should be varied and sufficient to supply our nutrients needs. These nutritional needs vary from one person to another, and it depends on several factors such as age, sex. It is different the nutritional needs that a woman has for a man or a child for an adult. It also depends on the nutritional status, the weight, height, the purpose that the person has with the nutritional status. For example, they need to gain weight or lose weight. It also depends on the level of physical activity and the physiological status. For example, the nutritional needs in a woman are going to differ if she is pregnant or lactating, or also it also changes, for example, in a person that have a specific condition such as chronic diseases, acute injury. People must ensure that these nutritional needs are going to meet primarily from foods and beverages, so they must ensure that they choose a variety of options from different food groups so they can have all the nutrients that they need for their health. Supplying all our nutritional needs by selecting and eating the adequate amounts and quantity of nutrients of foods that constitute a healthy dietary pattern is going to help us to maintain our health and reduce the risks of suffering from chronic diseases. The scientific evidence shows that a healthy dietary pattern is going to help us to keep our levels of total cholesterol and bad cholesterol within the normal ranges, as also the blood pressure. And having an adequate and healthy dietary pattern is also going to help us to maintain an adequate nutritional status and all nutritional parameters within the normal ranges, and also the muscles and bone health. By keeping an adequate nutritional status, we are going to prevent a condition such as obesity, and metabolic diseases such as type 2 diabetes. And it also is going to help us reduce the risk of cardiovascular diseases and cancer. Altogether, by preventing all these, the onset of these different diseases, we are going to reduce the risk of a premature mortality or death. So it is important to adapt our diets and align it with a healthy dietary pattern to take advantage of all the benefits that we can get for our health. As we can observe in this Global Nutrition Report, we can notice the heavy and unhealthy dietary pattern, which is characterized by the low consumption of fruit, whole grains, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, and high in processed meat, red meat, and sugar drinks, is associated with these chronic diseases, but not just having inadequate dietary patterns, but also having an inadequate nutritional status is going to increase the risk of suffering from these diseases and therefore the mortality associated to these diseases. The good news is that we can change this prospect by making changes in our current diet. We can move to a healthier dietary pattern. To do this, we count with several tools, such as My Plate, that is a tool that guides us on how to build our plate to have a healthier dietary pattern and also supply our nutritional needs. It guides us on building our plate with foods from the groups of fruits and vegetables, we should compose half of the plate. And also we should include foods from the group of grains, protein, and also dairy. We also must take into account that we should limit those foods that are high in sugar, saturated fats, and sodium. But we also must take into account that the level of physical activity is also going to help us to maintain our nutritional status and prevent these different diseases. The first group is constituted by vegetables. We need to eat a variety of vegetables and add into mashed dishes such as casserole, sandwiches, wraps, or snacks. This food group provides us with different nutrients such as vitamins, minerals, fiber, and phytochemicals. When we eat vegetables, we should prefer them fresh, but it also counts if they are frozen, dried, or canned. When we go for those canned, we should notice on the label that it says reduced in sodium or not added salt. This should be preferred. The average amount of vegetables is around 2.5 cups according to the American Dietary Guidelines. However, it may change from one person to another. And this food group includes a subgroup such as dark green vegetables, dark red and orange vegetables, starchy vegetables, and beans and peas. And we must make sure that we include them all in our diet. The second food group is constituted by fruits. They also provide us with nutrients such as vitamins, minerals, fibers, and phytochemicals, but they also contain higher amounts of carbohydrate, especially in the form of fructose, which offer us a good amount of energy. When we are going to eat the fruits, just like the case of vegetables, we should go for those that are fresh. However, if we don't have them available, we can also go for those that are frozen, canned, or dried. When we consume the fruits, we have also the option to consume them in the form of juice. Preferably, we should blend the fresh fruit. But if we don't have it and we buy them, we should select those that on the label says that is 100% fruit juice. The average amount recommended by the dietary guideline is 2 cups per day. However, we should personalize this amount and also make sure that we have the different ranges of fruits available. So make sure that you also always have fruits available at home because they are the perfect snack and you can also complement your main meals with fruits. The other food group that we make sure to include in our plates is the group of grains. This group mainly provide us with energy and fiber, but also smaller amounts of nutrients such as vitamins, minerals, and also proteins. We should prefer those that are in the whole grain versions. For example, if we used to eat bread or pasta or rice, we should go prefer for the whole grains version. At least we make sure that in our plate, half of the amount of these grains should be whole grains if we are going to include the refines. And the amount per day recommended by the dietary guidelines is around 6 ounces, but this may differ on each person's specific nutritional needs. The next group that we should include in our plate are the proteins. This food group and the nutritional content of this food group is going to vary depending on the source because we have plant fruits and we have animal fruits. This food group is divided into subgroups such as meats, poultry and eggs, pulses, and seafood. And the recommended amount by the dietary guidelines is around 5.5 ounces. However, this is going to differ according to the needs of each individual person. We must make sure that if we follow the vegetarian dietary pattern, we include the plant protein because this is an important nutrient and food group to maintain our health. We should also notice that the seafood subgroup is going to provide with another nutrients such as the omega-3 fatty acids, which are very important to maintain our cardiovascular health. The next group that we should include in our plate recommended by the dietary guidelines is the dairy foods. This is a good source of protein, calcium, and phosphorus. We should always make sure to prefer those that are the lower versions of the versions of lower fat. They are going to provide the same amount of nutrients, however, a lower amount of saturated fat and calories. If we are intolerant to the lactose, we should not skip on this food group, but also try the lactose-free versions of these food groups. And in this food group, we can include the milk, yogurt, cheese, but also non-dairy alternatives such as the soy milk and soy products. And the recommended amount by the dietary guidelines is around 3 cups that we also should personalize depending on our needs and the consumption of the other food groups. Finally, we have the groups of fats. Despite it is not specifically included in the tool My Plate, we should include it in our diets in order to supply our nutritional needs, especially of healthier fats that are the ones that we find in foods such as nuts, seeds, and fatty fishes such as sardines, tuna, salmon. And also we should limit the amount that we ingest of saturated fats. And for this, we can check on the labels of foods and also go for lean meats. If we use butter, margarine, or cheese cream, we should switch to healthier options such as extra virgin olive oil or other oil vegetables such as canola. And also we should notice that the higher amount of fats that we consume comes from the foods that we don't eat at home. And in this case, we should customize our orders and prefer those meals that have the less content of saturated fats. For example, we should limit the burgers, sandwiches, tacos, burritos, and those kind of meals that require the fried or fry preparation. So we should customize this order when we are not eating at home. When we check on the labels of food, we should consider that the amount of nutrients reported on the labels is going to depend on the serving size. So we should keep an eye on the amount of serving size that appears on the top part of the nutrition label. And we should keep an eye on key nutrients such as total fat, in which we are going to find the saturated fat content that is reported, and also the content of cholesterol, total sodium, and importantly, we should also limit the amount of added sugar, preferably to an amount lower than 50 grams per day. And we can check the amount of added sugar in the foods on the label because it's always reported here. And we should in this way we can control the amount of added sugar, sodium also that is important to keep it below 2.3 grams per day. And also the amount of saturated fat that should be lower to 22 grams per day. We also can customize the amount of sodium that we ingest because it also will depend in our individual needs and the condition or health status. So we should keep an eye on these key nutrients when we check on the labels of food. Importantly, to have an adequate dietary habit, we should consume water because after oxygen, it is the most important compound for our bodies and it is required in larger amounts despite it does not provide energy. The water is important because it acts as a solvent for chemical reactions and a medium for nutrients transport and is a thermoregulator. The average consumption of water is around 1.5 to 2.5 liters per day. However, this is customized depending on different factors. We also should consider that we obtain an amount of water too from our diets, not just from beverages, but also the foods, especially frozen vegetables, will also provide us with water. In order to comply with our nutritional needs, we should consume foods along the day in the different meals. And breakfast is the most important meal of the day because it provides us with the first energy and nutrients to start the activities of the day. And specifically after a long period of fasting, if we remain in this fasting status, it's not going to be good to our body because it's going to induce some modifications into our metabolism and it's going to decrease our academic and physical performance. And although breakfast is not the most abundant meal of the day in our culture, it's always important to consume it. And a recommendation for a healthy breakfast should include foods of the group of cereal, fruits, and dairies. And always remember to start the day by drinking water because besides the long period of fasting, we also have been dehydrated during this overnight. Lunch is the second most important meal because it will provide us with most energy and nutrients to continue the rest activities of the day. And in our culture is the most abundant meal. And because of this, we can include more foods from other food groups. For example, cereals, fruit, vegetables, protein, and fat. And it's always important to include it every day in our diet. Next, we have dinner, that is the third most important meal of the day. And we should make sure to always include it in our diets because it's going to prevent us to stay for more than 12 hours in fasting status. It should be light but complete, and a healthy dinner should include foods such as cereal, fruits, vegetables, dairy, or protein. Besides the three main meals of the day, we can also include in our daily diet snacks. They are important because they serve to give us a small part of energy that we might require in between the meals, depending on our nutritional needs and our physiological status or condition. These we can include as snacks foods from the groups of fruits, vegetables, cereals, or we can also drink just water. It is important also to notice that an important part of a healthy dietary pattern includes keeping our food safe. And we can accomplish this by following four basic food safety principles that work together to minimize the infection and foodborne diseases. These include cleaning, not just washing our hands, but also cleaning the foods that we are going to eat and also the surfaces where we are going to prepare our food. We should separate the raw foods from the cooked foods and also the foods that belong to the different groups. For example, we should separate the meats from the vegetables, dairies, and fruits. Also, cooking is an important process that maintains the safety of our food because the cooking process is going to eliminate most of the microbes that might have survived the process of washing our foods when they were raw. And finally, we should appropriate refrigerate foods promptly. If we are not going to consume them right away, or if we have some leftover, it's important to adequately preserve this food in the required temperatures to avoid the growth of microbes and contamination. When we are going to plan our meals, it is important to consider characteristics such as the quality of the food. We should always prefer nutrient-dense foods and avoid those that are higher in saturated fats, sodium, and sugar. We should also eat enough to supply our nutritional needs and avoid overconsumption of underconsumption of these nutrients and foods because they are going to be reflected in our health and nutritional status. We should consider a dietary pattern that is varied. We should include food from each of the different food groups in order also to have a complete diet that is going to provide us with all the different nutrients. We should also have a balanced diet. We should eat the adequate amount of each food group and avoid the preference of focusing just on one food group or one specific nutrient. We should always complement them all together. This diet or our meals should be adequate. We should eat necessarily what we have to or our bodies require depending on factors such as age, sex, nutritional status, conditions, physiological status, level of physical activity. And always our foods should be safe and free from microbes and foodborne diseases. And finally, we should consider also the foods that we have available and love our leftovers too. And importantly, I would like to discourage you to consuming foods that are not going to provide the most adequate nutrients for our bodies and to maintain our health. These are the industrialized foods because they are higher in nutrients such as saturated fats, sugar, and sodium. And these amounts of nutrients we are going to find in packaged, canned, and preserved food. Also foods such as sausages and sauces. So we all should always prefer the fresh, natural food. So please always be discouraged on eating this kind of foods. Finally, in order to maintain our health, we should always keep in mind that our lifestyle will always make a huge contribution even if we have a genetic risk. So we should always keep a healthy dietary pattern, but also have an adequate level of a physical activity, drinking enough water and having enough periods of rest and sleep, and also limit some non-adequate habits such as the high consumption of alcoholic beverages or smoking tobacco. And don't forget that you can make of your food your medicine. Thank you for your attention.